So, what sources did they cite within their culture? Like, how did they?
Yeah,
was
that's
it
a
was
good
it
point,
was
yeah.
it just this has been passed down to an elder in the cave over and over, so that's how we know it's the truth? Or did they say specifically like this elder was, generations ago was around for X, Y, or Z, and here's how we know it?
Right, so that's actually, they have a very specific point about how they say they got knowledge and where they. First of all, the history of the Dogon is unusual because they came from Africa. They actually were originally part of the ancient African Egyptian area, and they left because of religious persecution, and then ended up in Mali, which is sort of strange on its own because we're going to see other comparisons and connections through that part of Africa with parts of like the Olmec in Mexico, in Veracruz, which is very unusual, which shows that they likely made it. Anyway, what they state is that they learned everything from a great traveling being, a great sage that was known as Awanas in ancient Sumer, and they depicted it as like an aquatic being, which I think was purely symbolic, because when you go to Sumer and you learn about the great sages like Adapa and the Apkallu, they use symbolism to describe them in a way of what their mentality, what their purpose, a lot of different aspects of them. And you find that there was an ancient Sumerian god who is the heart of their entire civilization, known as Enki. And he's supposed to be the god of fresh water and the god of the oceans.
Can you go back for a minute for people who are
Sure.
unfamiliar right now? And I do want to say, for those who are listening today who are deep on ancient civilizations and know the history well, I apologize if we go back to do some stuff that may be basic for you, but there's a lot of people listening.
Yeah.
You and I talked about this before. There's a lot of people listening who are unfamiliar with some of these civilizations or all of it, and we need to make sure we have the context defined correctly so that we
That's
can
great.
move forward.
What this is coming down to is that I do believe that Sumer and the area of Iraq is where civilization began, but it's not when we told it. It's not when we're told it began. I believe that civilizations there are much, much older than even Younger Dryas Ice Age. I believe they may be as old as 50,000 years old.
What makes you think that?
What we're about to go over with evidence showing the different iterations of those civilizations, which proves that they're from these different time periods. And I just want to give one example.
Sure.
There's an ancient tablet called the Legend of Etana. And Etana, E-T-A-N-A, Etana was an ancient king of one of these cities called Kish. What's fascinating, though, is in that tablet, it opens up by discussing how there was a great catastrophe on the earth, and that basically all of civilization was destroyed, and that it had to be re-lowered again. Kingship had to be re-lowered again, like civilization to be recreated in this new world at Kish. Kish is part of this Sumerian region of Iraq. So it's telling you right there, look, we had these ancient cities that were created here. A catastrophe came through, destroyed them, and then another civilization emerged after. And that's a core concept that I want to be echoed through this entire conversation. I want to mention that again, because in Sumer, you find out that there are what these call great sages.
And I'm going to put a picture in the corner of the screen for people to follow this, by the way.
Throughout the ancient world, especially Sumer, we find this overlapping theme everywhere, shown in literally depictions of rock reliefs, in ancient texts, everywhere, of this idea of a great, powerful being, like a very, very smart, beyond anyone around them, who travels with a group around the world and creates civilizations. It's shown literally throughout countless texts. What connects this to the Dogon that's so strange is that the Dogon state that there was a being known as connected to Awanas in Sumer, the same depiction, same everything, that is the one that told them everything, is the one that where they got all the knowledge from.
There's got it. Okay.
So it's these ancient sage from Sumer made it to Mali, Africa. But is that the only place they made it to? No. That's only one of many, many, many.
Well, I may be way off base asking this, but you had mentioned a few minutes ago that we're talking about multi-civilizations, meaning like a bunch of Younger Dryas periods where this could have emanated from before.
Yes.
So could this perhaps go far enough back that we're talking about like Pangea, where all the land was together, and that's how.
I don't believe it's anywhere near that far back.
Okay.
I think we need to we should just briefly review geologic history.
Sure, let's do it.
Pangea, we're talking millions and millions and millions of years ago. What I'm looking at here, and even though it totally scares the mainstream academics and blows open the timeline of what we think, I do believe that everything I've studied, and I've been putting together a timeline of all the tablets and all the archaeological evidence, that our story, instead of being 6,000 years old, and I'm talking civilization, not like hunter-gatherer stuff, our story emerging, like civilization emerging, I believe is more like 200,000 years old.
200,000? No, that's a lot.
Yeah. So
because the Younger Dryas was 12,500 years ago.
That's what I'm saying is I've been uncovering evidence from looking at ice cores from Antarctica as well as Greenland, that what we're looking at is not simply one event that occurred around 13,000 years ago, but a cyclical nature of events that happens perhaps every 13, every 20, every 50. We don't know exactly the cycles, because like I was talking to Randall Carlson the other day. We had this great conversation where I said, Randall, it seems more like it's cycles within cycles than a cycle. He goes, that's exactly what I've found as well.
So, but does that mean, because the way I've always understood it, and maybe I'm fucked up here, but like the whole idea of like the Younger Dryas is that you had the Earth heat up and kill everything, and then suddenly, instantly, like freeze over, meaning nothing survives. But what you seem to, and again, maybe I'm missing it. Yeah. What you seem to be saying is that some people do survive.
Yeah, it's the extremes of it cannot be underestimated. So I do want to reiterate that, like Randall talks about, we're looking at events that are awesome, like he says, yes, that are beyond our comprehension, and I agree. But we're also talking about a civilization and people that were way more sophisticated in their understanding than we are. They were mapping the cosmos. They were tracking cycles based on the precession of the equinox of our Earth, and tracking how we face different constellations known as the zodiac. And how if you track ages, you can figure out when things are going to happen. They knew all of that. They knew about these events. That's why they created the most elaborate group of underground cities in the world. From Derinkuyu, Turkey, down through northern Iran, we find areas, and please, anything I say, look up all these things. There's a city called Derinkuyu that's only one of over 100 underground cities. D-E-R, or D-R-I-N, Derinkuyu. K-U-K-U.
Turkey?
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, but that spelling is tough. Anyway, that's one of that's one of over 200 underground cities.
When did you say they found this?
They just found it within the last 80 years.
No shit. I'll put pictures of that in the corner of the screen, and then I'll intersplice a map as well. So
yeah, somebody was in there. So this is the story of, for people that don't know. I don't remember the exact date off my head, but it wasn't that long ago. I think it was like 1950 something or 60. But there was a guy in an apartment that was doing a project on his house in that part of Turkey, and he collapsed a wall and literally found an entrance to the largest underground city on Earth. Oops.
Now, how did they build something like that?
That's what's so fascinating. These people knew that these events were so catastrophic they could wipe out their entire civilization. We literally could disappear from history. So they created the most elaborate group of underground cities in the world, creating air shafts, areas to even bring animals down, areas for sleeping, areas for schools, areas for preparing food. It's so advanced that in the door, they have this gigantic round stone they had to roll in front of the door in order to seal off what was inside.
How did they get down there?
They carved the entire thing by hand.
By hand?
By hand. It could house over 20,000 people.
But how do you get down there? It's not like
it's now a tourism thing where you can go.
No, I know, but back then, they didn't have an elevator, did they?
No, they walk down these stairs that go down to the ground, and like I said, at the entrance to this entire city, or many cities, not just one, Derinkuyu is just the biggest. They have this massive multi-ton stone that's round, and you can find it on images. They would roll in front of the door and seal the entire underground area for sometimes, you ready for this? Potentially hundreds of years. Now wrap your head around that. They had to live down there potentially for hundreds of years. It means entire generations had to live down there.
And you said they built air shafts and everything.
Yes.
But these are people now who are going to be... Did they have any light down there, or is it all candlelit?
We don't know those things, but I can tell you that we know that most of them never made it out. That's what's so scary.
And how do we know that?
because there's a site right next to them called Göbekli Tepe. And there's a newest one that was right next to it called Karahan Tepe. And what it is like a cosmic library where they had these giant T-shaped multi-ton pillars that were tracking the cosmos. Again, tracking the zodiac. And each pillar has like a depiction of a constellation. Like for instance, one of them, Pillar 43, is the most famous because it has the depictions of the handbags that I love to talk about. But also it's got the swan or the vulture known as Cygnus, with Deneb, the star at the top, which is like the brightest star in our entire around our solar system. So the strange thing is they seem to understand aspects of the cosmos that we don't.